Hello there, and welcome back to the Music Career Show. So, just in case you are a new listener, my name is Barry Carroll, and every week I dive into the secrets of building a successful career in music with amazing musicians and music professionals from every sector imaginable and all over the world. My aim is to help you get inspired with real life stories and learn from the industry insiders so that you can make music work for you. So while you still have your device in your hand, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, reviewing the podcast, and sharing it as far and wide as possible so that I can help unlock your potential as a music pro and everybody else that listens as well. So on this week's episode, first and foremost, today's guest, she is a wonderful piano teacher from Dublin, but she's also an author, a blogger, a podcaster, and a creator of imaginative and engaging teaching resources for music teachers all over the world. This is Nicola Cantan. Hello, Nicola.
Hi, great to be on. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. It's absolutely wonderful to have you on. Nicola, for those out there listening that might not have heard of you just yet, why don't you introduce yourselves to the lovely people?
Yeah, okay. So I am the creator of a site called Vibrant Music Teaching, which is a membership for music teachers. And I've been running a blog for even longer than that site, which is Colourful Keys. That's where some people know me from. And we're Colourful Keys on all the socials and all the things, if people have seen us around. But basically, what we're all about is making piano teaching, music teaching in general, more creative, more fun, bringing games into lessons and bringing back in improvisation and composition and those things that have been missing from traditional classical piano lessons.
Fantastic. I love it. I don't play piano myself, and I never had music lessons, even though I am a music teacher. Yeah, so I'm really interested to hear about how you do all that stuff. Before we dive into all of that good stuff, let's take it back a bit and find out where did music all start for you.
Yeah, fairly typical. I started piano lessons at age 7, as was standard at the time. Now it's getting a bit younger, but
Mm.
just had fairly traditional lessons, went through all the grades, all the typical thing. And then at some stage around age 15 or 16, I can never figure out which it was. My
Mm.
teacher said to me, you might think about teaching now. So I said, all right,
Grand, I'll do that. So
I'll do that. So put out my flyers, cycled to students' houses, and really had no idea what I was getting myself in for
yeah,
at all, or no self awareness to know that maybe I shouldn't be teaching without any pedagogy training.
yeah,
But I think it is the way a lot of people get started, and at least now there's more information online. Back then there wasn't. But yeah, started teaching, taught part time. Then what some people might see as a detour, but it wasn't to me. My main thing, I studied fashion in college.
all right.
Yeah. And I still taught part time the whole time. It was always supposed to be this side gig. It was something I enjoyed, but I never saw it as a career.
Yeah,
And then in my fashion work, I worked in the fashion industry for a little while in high street and then in pattern making, and then became self employed working in the bridal wear industry and started teaching again as a way to keep the income flowing, really, while
yeah.
I was starting up that business. And then the teaching just took over. I find I had so much more passion for that than what I had actually trained in. So, all alongside that, I studied privately, as you often do here, and got my teaching diploma and all of that. But my main thing was supposed to be fashion.
Oh, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. That's not what I was going to say. It's kind of the same as me, but it's not really. I had never really any intention of going into teaching. In fact, I avoided it like the plague for years and years and years. Um, yeah, that's so interesting that you started on like cycling at 15, at 15 or 16, and that was the start of it all. Where were you cycling to?
Just like houses in my local area, I'd put flyers through doors, and parents had called me up to look for lessons. At the time, I charged €2 extra for me to come to them, and therefore every
Wow.
parent had me come to them because obviously
Because
that's such a
obviously,
good deal.
yeah.
um, and yeah, gradually learned the business of it over the years from there, but that's where I started.
Oh, brilliant. €2 extra. Bless your little legs going 90, huh?
That was good for me.
I can imagine. Yeah, it kept you fit and healthy anyway. And what was the furthest you had to cycle?
Oh, I don't know, about 20 minutes or so. It was all within my local neighborhood in Dublin, and
That's
sure.
not too bad.
Yeah, it was
That's not
great.
too bad, in fairness. So then, like, because obviously that's how the vast majority of us start. That's my business model. All the tutors that work for my music school, they're all mobile, go out to students' houses, but they all drive. So, like, what does a piano teacher need to take with them on their bike on the way to, and how do they take it on their bike if they need to take anything? I suppose you can't really take a keyboard with you to lessons, can you?
No, but you wouldn't want to do that anyway because you want the student to have something to practice on.
Sure,
So,
no. Yeah.
um, that's a common misconception that teachers sometimes deal with parents in the beginning is, oh, we don't need a piano in the beginning, or we don't need a good instrument in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But you really do. If you're going to enjoy it, they need to have something decent to practice on. And so they will have something at their home anyway. So it's not a case of taking your instrument. Not
Yeah.
like if you're teaching guitar or something, you might want to have your own instrument and they have
Mm-hmm.
their own. It's not really like that so much with piano, although it's nice to have two pianos, you don't need them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what I would have had in my teaching bag was folders for each student. So I kept folders with named by student, it said Anna on the front or whatever. And I would keep
Yeah.
everything during the week that I was preparing for Anna in that folder and grab it on my way out. And that would include, if I had a game to play with Anna or whatever, it would all go inside that folder. So I had a pretty good organized system going.
Fair play to you. God, that's more organized than my system now. And like, you were only a teenager at the time. Christ almighty, fair play. But suppose nowadays you would just take an iPad with you and use Google Drive rather than an actual physical folder.
Yeah, I mean, for some things, I would still use a lot of physical materials, but yeah, for things like books, like your own teacher copy of things, yeah, you would just
Mm.
take an iPad now.
Yeah,
Back then, I had
absolutely.
to have my books with me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would always still, like, I've still got all the books in physical, absolutely everything, because I always find it's really handy if the student is really struggling with a piece, just write in right there, do that. And it reminds them when they go to practice. Not that students are great at practicing, but hey ho, in an ideal world, So you went through the whole graded syllabus yourself. How did you find that? Because I know that your philosophy on teaching has sort of been shaped by your, not negative experience, but by your experience and things that you thought could have been done better.
Yeah, look, the exam thing, I think when people know only have seen me a little bit somewhere, sometimes they think I'm like anti exams. I'm not anti exams. I
Mm-hmm.
just think we're going too far one direction or the other. So I think a lot of us have gotten it wrong because people are either I do all the exams, no question, students do them year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Or in other countries in particular, outside Ireland and the UK and Australia, who are very exam focused, there's people who say, no, I would never do an exam. And
Yeah.
I think it should be somewhere in between. I think you should be picking and choosing. So with my own students, they do exams. Sometimes I suggest them if I think it's going to be beneficial for them.
Mm-hmm.
But my experience growing up with the exams, I didn't know any different. So I didn't know what I was missing, but there
Mm.
was a lot missing, really.
Yeah.
It was just going through exam after exam. I didn't read enough material because, you learn your three pieces for the year and then you're told to do stuff outside of that, but really there's a limited window to get that done. So you don't end up learning much except those three pieces and
Yep.
your scales. You
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't improvise. You don't really explore theory in creative ways either or anything
Yeah.
like that. So I think it was quite narrow. I had some wonderful teachers, but they're teaching within the Irish system as it was and as it still pretty much is. So it was quite a narrow focus until I realized the whole world of music was out there in my
Yeah.
late teens and started exploring.
Yeah, I know. I always find it so funny when parents send their kids for lessons and they come in for their first lesson. Oh well, so what kind of music you into? Oh, I don't know. Like, right, you're coming in to learn how to play guitar. Yeah. So what songs would you like to learn how to play guitar? Oh, I don't know. Okay, what was the last song you listened to? Oh, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And it's so funny that you as a teacher, you are so responsible for pretty much this child's musical development. And if you're just going to be pushing them into another exam thing, i.e., extra school, it can be so damaging and it can really, really put them off. So I really think that there is so much to be said for not being exam focused completely. I've never done an exam in my life. I've never done a great exam in my life. I'm completely and utterly self taught, bar 6 lessons that I had when I was 13 because my dad wouldn't get me an electric guitar until I'd had lessons, and that was it. So you went into fashion And then you came back out of fashion, and then you were doing bridal stuff and all that kind of crack, and that was great. What made you want to go back into teaching? Was it just the necessity of keeping your head, keeping yourself going, or did you like really want to do it deep down, or what happened?
Initially it was just a necessity. It was, this is how I've known how to make money when I'm stuck in the past. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
had only had a year off actually of teaching because I worked in the industry, and then I started teaching a bit again on the side, again, just to make extra cash. That's what it always was. I
Yeah,
liked kids, I liked piano, but I wasn't in love with any of it yet at that stage, even though I'd been doing it for 7 or 8 years, I guess.
yeah,
But it was when I got into it and I had a particular student, they had some issue. I can't remember what it was, but something I was trying to solve for them. I
uh-huh,
thought, I'll look this up online, right?
uh-huh,
And then I discovered teaching blogs existed. I mean, this is back really in the early days of them, but
right,
teaching blogs exist. And there's all these different ideas, and you can use games to teach. And oh my gosh, I could make a game. I have design skills. And that's when it all started getting really exciting. And I fell in love with teaching. I'm much more a teacher really than a musician. I love the craft of teaching.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's when I fell in love with it, was over that period. And I started expanding my students, and gradually they became what I really wanted to do more than the other stuff, all the fashion stuff. And they've really swapped,
yeah.
sewing and things like that. That's my hobby now. And teaching is my profession. They just swapped roles.
Fantastic. And did you mention there that you did actually do a teaching diploma while you were working? Where did you do that, and how did that go?
At the RIAM, so, like, it's basically the next it feels like the next level of all the grades. Sorry, I say RIAM, which is totally wrong. The Royal Irish Academy of Music. I
All
tend to
right,
just
okay,
pronounce
right.
it as RIAM. I don't know why I do that.
No, that's all right.
Internally, even they say RIAM, which makes more sense, but I
Yeah,
tend
but
to
sure,
just
listen.
refer to it as the RIAM. Anyway, yeah, so I went through all up to grade 8, then I did my senior certificate, then I did my diploma after that. It's kind of like a continuation of the same system, although it gets into, when you get to the stage of it being a diploma, you're choosing between a performance diploma and a teaching one.
Right. And did that then, I suppose it definitely did help you in, I was going to say, did that help you in teaching? Because obviously it did. That's a stupid question to ask. But what I'm trying to ask is like, would you have been able to do the things that you're now doing if you didn't have that? Because it sounds like you were thinking like really outside the box. And it sounds like this teaching diploma was very much inside the box.
Yeah, I think it gave me two things. I think I would largely be teaching the same way if I hadn't done it. I'm
Uh-huh.
not going to say it revolutionized everything. However, first thing it did do was just give me confidence, like, yes, this person will give me a piece of paper. I do know what I'm doing, even though I
Yeah.
don't have this degree. And I know that's a point of insecurity for a lot of teachers. If they assume all the teachers around them have degrees and they're the only ones, that's not fact. It's about 50%. I mean, we've done this in our
Mhm.
survey. A lot of teachers don't have degrees in
Mhm.
the particular specialty that they're teaching in.
Yeah.
So it gave me that confidence. But much more than that, one component of doing the diploma is that you have to record your lessons. You have to take videos of your lessons and then submit some of them. Now, you only have to
Oh.
submit a couple, I can't remember, but I recorded all of them for a period of time just with a particular student just so that I could choose.
Mhm.
And that is the thing. If you don't do the diploma, just start doing that. It is so tough on you in the beginning because
Uh-huh.
it's brutal to watch yourself. Everyone
I
hates
can
it.
imagine. Yeah.
You're not alone. If you hate hearing your own voice, if you hate watching yourself, and especially watching yourself teach, it can be horrible. But you
Mhm.
can learn so much from that, so much more than anything else you can do is just watching yourself teach and going, why did I say it like that? I need to adjust, that language. I see now where they misunderstood me in that conversation and how we went down a rabbit hole that took us 5 minutes to get out of.
Yeah.
So that was the enormous really thing that I got out of that. And I have kept recording my teaching periodically. And it's something I have all the teachers who work here do as well. About 3, 4 times a year, they to record a whole week of their teaching, and then we both watch it back.
Wow, that's I'm really impressed with that. That's a great idea. I've noticed since starting doing this podcast for the past 6, 7 months that I knew it all about myself anyway, but I am the greatest waffler that ever did waffle. And it takes me, like, you've probably seen it already, and people listening to this know full well that I take forever and a day to just say the simplest thing, but I can't help it. And I'm really trying. And it's that's such a good way of, like, continuous professional development, because as self-employed music teachers, as self-employed anyone, we just don't get that. So we have to take and make our own opportunities, and that's a really, really good one. Anyone out there that might be thinking that maybe their retention rate of students is a bit poor or could be better, start filming your lessons and see, is there anything on your end that you could maybe do to improve that student experience, or even phone, or even record your phone calls between the parents or whatever, or the students, or if you're talking to prospective students, and listen back and see, are you taking forever and a day to say something, or are you, like, speaking loads but saying very little? Taking it from someone that does speak loads and say very little, um it's as it's as much of a curse as it is a blessing. But sure, listen, anyway, there I go again, ranting on about absolutely nothing. So you were saying you were working in the bridal shop. You started teaching again out of kind of just to get sort of a few extra beer vouchers for the weekend. And when did you then make the transition into full time teaching?
Yeah, it happened gradually. Um, my week started filling up pretty fast. Once I put together my website and got my head around that,
Hmm.
I started getting a lot of inquiries over time because people were looking for something that I offered that isn't really available a lot around me, which is this not exclusively exam focused, not even that I don't ever do exams, not
Yeah,
exclusively focused on exams, piano
yeah,
lessons. And a lot of that is parents who, like yourself, were self taught and really kind of railed against the whole traditional way of doing things, or
yeah.
went through the traditional approach, maybe even got to quite a high grade and never
Uh-huh.
played again. And they're
Yeah,
thinking, what was the point of that?
exactly.
So, yeah, not everyone does it. Like, there are exceptions, but they often are the people who become teachers and therefore they think it worked, but it only worked for them because they're the exception, like me.
Yeah,
Um, so I started getting more inquiries, started filling up my week, and pretty much the teaching just took over the course of, I'd say, a year, until I had to recognize the fact that, hey, I really want to be doing this far more than the other thing. So let's
yeah, yeah,
just admit that to ourselves.
yeah.
Um, and take it from there.
Still must have been terrifying though, going into full time.
You know what? It was much more terrifying before that, going into being self employed. That was the big step for
Uh,
me because I'd
yeah,
already gone self employed in order to start this bridal wear business and the teaching, and, I was juggling the two. And that was the terrifying step, was like, I'm not going to have a real employer. No one's going to
yeah,
send me a paycheck. I have to make
exactly.
this work
Yeah,
and not be a burden for people around me while I do it. So that was the step, but the teaching was what was working. So that taking over really wasn't scary to me, and it made a lot of sense. Like, I could just feel that it was the right fit for me, that it was
yeah,
actually a lot more creative than what I had been doing, which seems like the creative profession of, like, working in fashion. It's an arts, it's a
yeah,
degree in the art field. So people would think that's the creative side, but actually a lot of what you're doing is not creative. And the
yeah.
teaching work was creative and it was fulfilling in that way.
Brilliant. So what was your business model then when you started? Were you still cycling around students' houses, or had you upgraded to a car at that stage?
I did have a car at that stage.
There you
I
go.
got a I got a car fairly early on, age 19 or so. So at some point in there, I transitioned to driving
Good
to
stuff.
people. Um, yeah, but I was still doing 50-50 for a long time. It was up to parents to choose. So I wasn't charging only €2 for me to come to them anymore. I was charging more than that, but they still had a choice for a long
Yeah.
time. Um, and then I got rid of the traveling to students, and then I brought it back in when I hired other teachers here. So it's evolved over time.
It's evolved over time. And what did you like? Do you teach from your house, or have you got a studio, or what's the story?
Yeah, no, I teach from my house now. We have two teaching rooms here. So
Oh,
I teach
cool.
from here, and so do the other teachers on different days, and they have other days where they travel to students. So it's a
All
mixture.
right. Okay. Very good. Have you any great ambitions to like kind of transition to a huge studio or anything like that?
I'm someone who's always very careful to look ahead to what your job is going to be day
Uh-huh.
to day if you make a certain business choice, rather than letting myself just follow like this is what success is. So I feel like the default, if you're teaching music, you start hiring other teachers, then you move to a commercial space, then it becomes this big music school, and that's like this is what you should do. And I've always been someone to force myself to pause and say, hang on, what would your day look like? Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And if I had some massive school, would I get to teach? No.
No.
That's the answer. And that's what I love doing. I love teaching the other teachers here, like that's part of what we do. But
Yeah.
keeping it small, at least as I see it now, this may change, is the only way to keep that going, where I'm still actively teaching and I'm getting to mentor them and teach them how to teach and, pass things along and run private music teaching and all the other things I do. Whereas if I let it become a massive school with huge overhead, I don't think I would have that freedom.
God, I wish I had your restraint and your patience. I am literally in the process of finding my first commercial space because I'm sick to death of me teachers being out and about driving around the place. Yeah, but
Yeah, but if it's
I'm
a
I'm
legitimate goal, that's fine, isn't it?
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I just don't have that. Like I think I'm this right clever lad. I think I'm great. Do you know what I mean? But I'm really not at all. I don't have that ability to think that far ahead. And my wife is great at it. My wife is great at knocking me down every single peg that I need to be knocked down and more. But yeah, no, I just see him like I just see Barry as king of the world in terms of music teaching in Aberdeen for starters, anyway. And I fail to see pretty much all the pitfalls along the way until I'm 10 foot deep in them. But listen. As I said earlier on, this ability to waffle, it is a bit of an ability, and there's never been a situation in my life I've not been able to either talk myself into or out of. So long may that continue, touch wood. But oh no, that's great though. You mentioned you mentioned something there about that's what like success can basically you were saying success can look different to totally different to everybody, and it doesn't have to be just Nicola ends up absolute queen of all music teachers in Dublin to be successful. Do you know what I mean? Like that'd be amazing, I'd imagine. But it doesn't have to happen if that's not what your goal is. And if your version of success is that, and you feel like you've made it, you're working out your house, you've got your perfect work life balance, you've got more students that are you're servicing. That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic, and I think that's a really, really important lesson for people to learn that you don't have to have the massive, big, um, grand goals or whatever you want to call it, um, in order to be successful. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, which is something that
And
I probably should have learned a long time ago as well. But anyway,
I think your version of success, your version of what grand means, not in the Irish sense of grand, in the
no,
proper
no,
sense
no,
of
no.
grand, your version of what is grand and what is big to you can look different. Um, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be physically big to be a big dream. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of the sort of in the, especially the business of music teaching space, some
Mm-hmm.
of the people out there are trying to say that if someone wants to teach 8 students a week from their living room, that they should just forget it,
Yeah.
or that that's not, that they're not fulfilling their potential, that they have to do this and that. And I think that's completely the backwards way to look at it. If that
It is.
is their ideal scenario, then that is amazing and that's wonderful. And they can have big dreams within what they do with their students or what they do with their business within that context that fits within their life. Teaching is one, private music teaching anyway. It's one of those professions that can actually fit in really well with so many different lifestyles, parents and whatever else you're dealing with, aging parents of your own, or whatever situation in your life, it actually is adaptable to that. And
Mm,
that's fantastic. And it doesn't mean that you don't count somehow or that your dreams are small, which I feel is a lesson I've heard communicated at people.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm big on defining your own version of what that big dream is.
That was wonderfully put. So it was. I wish someone had said that to me 2 years ago. But yeah, that's wonderful. I'm making myself out to be a right sob story. I'm delighted with where I am. I'm really happy with where I'm going. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just lovely and refreshing to hear things put that way, because you're right. You hear about all these, and especially on social media, you'll be served ads from X, Y, and Z. Oh, get 1 million students in half an
yeah,
hour with my class, savage, unbelievable sales system that I'm going to plug into your music school, and all you need to do is pay me 10 grand for
yeah,
10 minutes of your time, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And that's great if you have the capacity to actually take that on and implement it, and then actually go and serve all 1 million of those students. And you're right, it's sort of selling that dream. And it's not so much selling that big dream. It's like kind of like what you're saying. It's like nearly saying that your version of your big dream isn't big enough, and therefore doesn't count. Um, yeah, well, you've put it very, very nice and lovely and stuff, and I love that. So, in terms of the other bits and bobs that you get up to, you're an author. So, what do you write? What have you written? What's the story with that? That's exciting.
yeah. I have several books. I I debate how to count them. I have 4 regular books, and
Okay,
then I have my workbook series. Um,
right.
so depends if you count those as books or not, but obviously they're
I'm
filled in
counting
by
them.
students. Yeah.
I
Um,
once made a music manuscript with my logo on it, so I'm counting myself as an author. So if that counts, then you go, girl.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel they should count, but they're just in a different class. They take more time, by the way, workbooks
Hmm.
than
I can
regular
imagine.
written books.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have books. The first book I ever published was the Piano Practice Physician's Handbook. So that's about practicing. It definitely would apply to any other instrument. I particularly put piano in the title just because I'm talking about right hand, left hand. But I
Yeah.
think it could be adapted to anything you're doing,
Uh-huh.
any instrument you're playing, or even voice. And then after that was Rhythm in Five, which are just these short rhythm activities that teachers can do in 5 minutes or less. Because I found a lot of teachers were having trouble just fitting in foundational rhythm work, and also were
Uh-huh.
so frustrated by their students' rhythm skills.
Yeah.
Um, and then after that was playful preschool piano teaching, because that's one of my specialties, is taking on very young students. And then the most recent one is directed to parents. So it's called Practice Pi. It's a very short book written to parents about how they can support their child with their practice at home.
Oh, that's clever. I'm taking a note of these because I've not had lessons myself. I make it that this makes me sound horrendously unprofessional, but I promise I'm not. I make it up as I go along, and I basically teach the way that I learned. Like I learned myself from watching YouTube, very, very slowly, because as you and I both know, back in Ireland, back in the day when YouTube first came out, you had to load up your 3 minute video, go put the kettle on, do something else, and come back, and you might get the first few seconds. So it's quite awkward, but I managed to do it. But because I've got no formal training, trying to figure out how to introduce the idea of rhythm is, well, for me anyway, is so awkward. I understand how it works, and I think I understand how to communicate that to an extent, but trying to communicate it in a way that kids will understand is really awkward for me. So I'm taking note of that. Rhythm in five, and then what was the last one you said? Practice pie.
Practice pi. Yeah, the idea is you're making practice as easy as pie. It's not actually that easy, but still, that's
No, but
that's the
still,
idea.
that's so outside the box. It's like Inception, sort of. It's like you're like, yeah, you will. It's like a Jedi mind trick. It's like, here you go. Here's a book on how to help your child. You know the way that you're paying for these music lessons and your child is meant to practice. Now you've paid for a book as well.
Yeah,
That's genius. That's absolutely genius. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna get them. So I am
absolutely. If
very good.
people listening want a taste of the whole practice pie thing, there's actually a few videos on YouTube that I've done that kind of summarize bits of it. So if you just look up practice pie on YouTube, you can get a sense of my approach and whether you're going to agree with the advice I'm giving out, before you recommend the book to parents.
Ah, listen, you seem to know what you're doing. I'll take your word for it. Yeah, it's grand. Be grand. Sure. What are people going to do? Like, in fairness, I'm going to get onto that fella on the podcast. Oh, do you know what I mean? Speaking of podcasts, you do your own podcast. What's
I
the story
do.
with your podcast? What's that all about?
It's called the Vibrant Music Teaching Podcast, very
Mhm.
simply. And they're generally solo shows, or sometimes I have on a member of my team at Vibrant Music Teaching. Um, and they're all quite short. So they're like 10 to 20 minutes, just little bits of actionable advice or thoughts on various aspects of teaching.
Oh,
Some of the shows are about business, some of the episodes are about small teaching things or admin or whatever. There's a whole range of stuff, but we're at like around 250. I think we're almost at 250 episodes, so there's plenty to go back and listen to there.
class. You've been at it for a while then, have you?
Yeah, I would have to look up the date I started because all these things started on different dates. But yeah, it's been a little while. We've been doing it
Aye.
weekly. Yeah, so I
Well,
guess
if it was
5
250
years.
episodes, that's about 5 years if you're doing it weekly.
5 years ish, yeah, I'd say.
Wow, that's class. And what inspired you to start the podcast then?
Mostly in that case because I love podcasts. I've been writing the blog for a lot longer than that,
Uh-huh.
but I was just thinking about my own habits, and I had been at that stage listening to podcasts. I was pretty early adopter of podcasts, and it was my favorite way to consume information and find things out and get interesting ideas. So I just wanted to contribute to that, really.
Very good. And was it the same with the blog? So are the blog and the podcast sort of rolled into one?
They're linked, and a lot of the topics now these days are it'll be a similar topic covered in a different way. So we'll often have a guest writer on the blog, and then I'll be recording the podcast with my thoughts on it on the same kind of topic that week. But the blog started much earlier. That started in 2013, so that's been
All
going a
right.
long time.
That's 10 years.
Yeah, we're coming up on 11 this 11, yeah, 10 years this year. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, what inspired you to start the blog then?
The blog, very early on, it was just a way to share the games. So, as I mentioned earlier, I had started teaching again, found the world of piano teaching blogs that was out there, and some of the
Yeah.
games people were sharing, people like Susan Paradis, if people know. If you know, you know, she's been around a long time.
Yeah.
So, and I had figured out, oh, I can do this. Like, this is design work. This is my whole thing. I can do this, no
Yeah.
problem. So I just wanted to give back some of the games. Like, I had really got these ideas from them, the whole idea of using games in the first place. And I wanted to share the resource I was creating, especially on the preschool piano side, because there weren't a lot of games that were at that really foundational level and went slowly enough for my
Yeah.
3 and 4 and 5 year olds. So I just wanted to share them. And over time, I started sharing more thoughts and actually writing articles rather than just saying, here's a game, here's what it's for.
Right. Fair enough. So so it just sort of went on from there, and now it's big class, huge bank of amazing resources and podcasts and stuff for teachers all over the world.
Yeah, it just grew
I
over
love it.
time. These
I
things
love
build
it.
up.
And then so then where do you get your ideas for the blog? Is that kind of where the guest writers come in because there's only so much content that's going to be in your head, or
Yeah, I get this, like, where do the ideas come from question quite a lot, especially in relation to the games that I create for the membership.
yeah,
The ideas never really stop, honestly. The guest writers is because I can't physically do every single job in my
100%.
business anymore.
Yeah,
Um, and I want to have different perspectives. So though although I can write my perspective on many different topics, it's not going to be the same as what someone else would write. And we want to have this diverse perspective represented on the blog. So that's really where the guest writers came in was my way isn't the only way to think, and I don't think I have all the answers completely figured out. I just have
yeah,
different thoughts and things to try and things I'm experimenting with. So, yeah, that's where the guest writers came in, and the ideas, I don't they just come from my teaching, honestly. They all just come back to either my own students of the teachers that work here and conversations I'm having with them and what they're
yeah,
struggling with in their teaching, or teachers that I talk to online, like through the membership and stuff, and issues they're having. Even if I haven't had the same issue, I can get inside that, understand what's happening.
yeah.
Basically, I'm a problem solver by nature. I have to answer
Okay.
a question. If I have a question in my mind, I have to come up with a solution for it,
Hmm.
and that's really what ideas are.
Fair enough. And then how do you go about like building these games? Is it like because I have apps like I've where this question came from was that I've seen some of your videos on Rhythm Railroad, and it's a while since I've seen it, admittedly, but I was really impressed at the time. I was like, that's class. And when I first saw it, I think actually that was probably the first time I was introduced to you. Anyway, when I saw it, it didn't even dawn on me that you would have been the one to do it. And now not to it's kind of it's one of these things that I just assumed that it was just like a big app. Do you know what I mean? That big company made, because that's what everybody thinks when they see an app on the App Store or something like that. They're like, oh, so that's made by Sony in forever. Do you know what I mean? And
Right,
it's this
yeah.
big massive corporation, and they don't realize that an awful lot of things that are built are just Nicola in her house in Dublin, or like Captivate, the podcast hosting that I use. It's made in the UK by like a fella called Mark, and you're just like, how? It's like that's huge software. So anyway, where so and it just it's so funny. So where I'm going with that is like, so how does Nicola in her house in Dublin go about creating such an amazing game?
Well, I want to first say that I have a lot of support. So I do have about 8 people on my team right now,
Oh
all
wow.
freelancers, most of them teachers who are combining this work with their teaching, and they want daytime work, and this fits in nicely for them. So
Uh-huh.
I do have a lot of people working for me. That being said, I do still create all the games. That's my thing, and that's remained my thing. I have help,
Yeah.
definitely, especially with proofreading, because otherwise they would be riddled with errors because people can't
Yeah.
proofread their own work.
No.
Um, but yeah, it starts with the idea. What is the
Mhm.
concept we want to teach, usually?
Mhm.
Or occasionally, what is the theme we want this game to have? Because a teacher wants something that's, for a space obsessed student, or there's like, we want something for Diwali to include their Hindu students, something like that. But
Mhm.
usually it starts with the concept. So this student is mixing up right and left hand, something as basic as that. Like they just don't know their right from their left. Okay,
Mhm.
how can we make this into a game? And that part is just me staring off into space. That's literally what it looks like. It's just me sitting there staring at the sky until I think of something. And it
Yeah.
just sort of whirs around. Sometimes that take ages, sometimes it's instant, and I just scribble down the idea. Um, and then it's into my design software. So I'm coming up with the artwork. It's all in Adobe software. So that's what I used in college and in my working life as a fashion designer. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm very comfortable with. Adobe Illustrator primarily, some Photoshop, and a lot of InDesign.
Cool. So it is as, and I don't mean to play this out. It's as simple as that. That these amazing looking games can be produced with something as simple as like Photoshop and Adobe and stuff like that.
Yeah, primarily Illustrator is what you want for that, and then some music notation software sometimes. But I often get questions from teachers saying, "How can I create games like this?" And the
Mm.
answer is you have to do years of painstaking getting used to Adobe software. Like it's a whole other skill set. If you want to do that and you find it really fun, that's great. But you're not
Yeah.
going to be able to do this with Canva level skills. It's just you can do some basic things, and Canva's great, and we use it in our business.
Yeah.
But if you want this kind of thing, you really need to invest the time in understanding what vectors are and, and stuff like that.
Well, that's my next question answer there. I was going to say, is this possible in Canva? But it obviously isn't. So,
Some
yeah,
basic things are. I'm not trying to say you can't do anything in Canva.
yeah,
Most things will take you longer ultimately in this realm.
yeah.
But you can certainly put together your own things in Canva to a certain
Well, no,
degree.
well, no, fair play to you. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So speaking of teaching, your vibrant music teaching membership. Talk to me about that. What does that involve? What's the crack?
Yeah, so that membership has been going for like 5.5 years now.
Mm.
Will be 6 this September, which is exciting.
Woo.
Um, And it started as a way to organize games. So I'd been using games with my students for years and years at that stage, but I was still super frustrated by, with my own games and with others, a way to be able to find the right game at the right time for that student. So I want to
Yeah.
teach this particular concept at this level. Even now I wanted to take this amount of time, or I have this many people to play it with, like it's just me and the student, or they have to do it by themselves, or I have a whole group, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking about it and realized, hey, I know stuff about websites. I'm sure I can just build a page with
Mhm.
filters on it.
Yeah.
So I started with that and then said, other teachers are going to like this too. So that is where the membership started, was this filterable library. And teachers loved it and it was great. And then over time, we started including courses. So by now, we have about 30 courses.
Oh wow.
Um, Everything from how to run your business to fully laid out lesson plans for a whole year of preschool music classes, sort of pre-instrumental with a little bit of
Yeah. Yeah.
piano, for example, or chord crash course, which is like from the beginning of playing chords on the piano, various different things, covering a whole wide range, and other tools in the community, of course, as well. So it's really expanded to be quite a big site. Generally, now members will join either because they want a particular course or they want access to the games, and then they get in and they discover all the other things we do as well.
Amazing stuff. That's great. So, what does an onboarding process look like for any teachers out there that are potentially thinking of kind of stepping up the game and joining your membership?
Yeah, so they can obviously visit vibrantmusicteaching.com to see all the details of what's included and everything like that. You
Mhm.
can choose to pay monthly or annually, so you're not locked in. If you choose monthly, you just pay for 1 month at a time.
Yeah.
And then when you join, you'll go through this process where I basically walk you through choosing one thing to focus on at a time, because overwhelm is teachers' biggest enemy in my experience.
Mm.
And that's what we want to avoid. So where I've said, oh, we have all these things, we have almost 400 games, I think now. We have an incredible amount of stuff.
Yeah.
But my job is to not let that become overwhelming. So
Yeah.
when you join, you walk through this process, and if you just follow that path, you'll be making the right steps and being able to do it consistently, because you're not
Yeah.
trying to do too much at once.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. See, whenever I have a look at, like, or I come across a new membership, or I come across a new idea or a new X, Y, and Z, and then you look into it and you see all these features, all I see is a list of homework, and I'm just like, I've got enough on my plate. Do you know what I mean? And that can often deter people. It would often deter me, and I suppose you kind of have to have a word with yourself and be like, this is, look, Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't have to have this done by any amount of time. You can take as long as it takes. Um, Brilliant. So you must have teachers from all over the world then, and that, have you?
Yeah. I keep meaning to get us a map. I was talking to my husband about this today. He works
Mm.
for Vibrant Music Teaching as well. And we want to get a big map to mark it all out so I can see physically how many countries we have members in. But yeah, it's literally all over the world at this stage.
Cool. There's a really simple way of doing that. If you've got, if people sign up with their addresses, you can simply, I suppose they might have to put in their address for payment details. Anyway, what you can do is you can just get all their addresses on a CSV file or an Excel file and drop them into Google Maps, and then that'll show you exactly where they all are in the world.
Oh yeah, I mean I have other reporting tools and stuff. What I want is like a physical map on the wall, just because I think it'd be
Oh,
fun. Like I want a coloring project. That's, that's what I'm talking about. I want to like color them in. I just think it would be fun. But that's where the name comes
that's
from. Colorful
that's
keys for a reason.
That yeah, I love that. That's so much fun. Right. Call to action for everybody out there listening in the podcast verse. If anybody can make that happen for Nicola, send her an email at
Oh, I'm Nicola at vibrantmusicteaching.com.
Grand. See if this works. I'll be the happiest person in the world. Then do you know what I mean? If it works, that'd be class. I want that as well. Hey, make one for me as well. I've only got like students in Aberdeen and one in Dubai, but it'd be a very, very quick project for me. But listen, if you're out there and you're listening, you can make that happen. Make that happen, because that'd be class. So music teaching then. So just going back really quick to music teaching, and obviously you're piano teacher and stuff like that. Does your school have any, is it just piano that you focus on mainly, or do you take on other instruments?
Just piano.
Just
That's
piano.
that's largely because of my business model. So when I started hiring other teachers, it wasn't really to expand the business. I wanted to be able to take on other students, but the reason I really took on other teachers was I was taking on younger and more inexperienced teachers
Hmm.
to train them. So we work very closely together.
Yeah,
I don't have the capacity, like, I can't train someone to be an effective violin teacher. So that's why we're
very,
exclusively piano.
very valid point there. Yeah, very good. So you must have, and I know that you do have a video on this, but you must have a recommendation for what you feel the best piano syllabus would be. And this is a question from me, because me as a guitar player, I can't play piano. Like, I know how piano works, but it's backwards for me. And my piano teacher, or the piano teacher that works for my company, we've been trying to figure out what the best one is. And I just relate it back to what I know, and I know the guitar and the drums syllabus from rock school. So what do you think is the best piano syllabus?
Are we talking about like a method that you could use from the start? That kind of thing,
So
like a series of
so
books
yeah,
or
so the way that I teach, and the way that we all teach at my school, is that we use a syllabus as a starting off point. Like I said, when students come to us, what kind of music do you want to learn? Oh, I don't know. Grant. Well, I tell you what, why don't we start here with this? And then as we go along, you might get interested in other music, and we can look at that. So while we don't stick religiously to a syllabus, we do use it as like a fail safe, I suppose, is probably the best way to put it.
yeah. I still am a big fan of piano teachers starting with a method book before you get to the level of any of the piano syllabi that are out there. Um, so even though that's not your question, I will recommend a method book, which is Piano Safari, to
Okay.
give a good foundation and a great jumping off point. Obviously, I do a lot of stuff that's outside of a method book,
Uh-huh.
but that aligns with how I believe in teaching reading to piano students, mixture of rote pieces with reading pieces, and the fact that they include improvisation. In
Okay.
terms of an actual regular syllabus, I still use our local one, which is the Royal Irish Academy of Music, when my students do exams, but it's not something I use in the way that you are. So I don't think I can give a recommendation for the way you do things.
Okay, fair enough. I'll definitely have a look into Piano Safari anyway. And anyone listening, go and have a look into Piano Safari, and so on and so forth. We don't have the Royal Irish Academy of Music, obviously, in Scotland.
Yeah.
So, but
But for
hey
teachers
ho.
listening like all over the world, a lot of these exam boards and things, their syllabus is online. So if you just want repertoire inspiration and want to get a sense of like what level is this piece at, look up the ABRSM or Trinity or Royal Irish Academy or the Canadian one or whatever, because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can get a lot of different inspiration that way.
That's a good tip. I never thought of that. Because yeah, because I use a couple of different syllabus, but yeah, very good. Um, cool. In the same sort of vein, what is the number one hack then that you can think of that you could give to music studios to improve their business, their model, their whatever you want it?
Depends what we count as a hack. What do we mean by hack here?
Let's go for number one hack for improving your teaching business.
Okay. So I am going to give you three things and I'm going to break your rule instantly. But there are three
Love it.
things I see teachers get wrong a lot in the business side of what they're doing
Hmm.
that really affect so much of their life, their mental health, everything.
Hmm.
Number one is giving makeup lessons. I'm big on not rescheduling lessons with students. Number two is going to some, which is tied to that, is going to some kind of a flat monthly fee, flat semester fee. Don't take payments lesson by lesson or even tot up per month. Like there are this many lessons in this month, so it's this much. Just make it the same every month or every term or every 10 weeks or whatever you want to do. And number three is to make sure you're raising your fees consistently. Never more important than at the moment when we've got inflation being as high as it is. So at least keep up with inflation every year, even when it's not high, even when it's only 1% to 2%. But if you do that, parents aren't expecting it to be the same from year to year, and you don't have to make one huge jump. so you're not backing yourself into a corner. Fees change every year, just keep them updated and you
Yeah.
won't end up behind the times.
Let's just have a very very quick 30-second deep dive into 30-second deep dive. That's an oxymoron in itself, isn't it? But sure, anyway, so makeup lessons. Why don't you offer reschedules?
Because a student is not, or a parent is not booking that 30 minutes with you. That's not what they're paying for. They're paying for a spot in your studio and
Yeah,
everything that that entails, including all the effort you put in outside of lessons. So if you reschedule them, that's communicating that they are just paying for your 30 minutes of time. And the other issue is you're usually rescheduling them to the detriment of your other students. So you put them early in the morning before you normally start lessons for that day. And that means you're slightly more tired for all your other students who didn't ask you for any rescheduling or anything like that. So, and a lot of teachers bring up like, what about a 30-day notice or this many reschedules per month, per year, whatever.
uh-huh.
No, and the reason for that is when you give any wiggle room, people are going to say, but this, but that. And if you just make it none, it's actually a lot fairer to everyone and everyone understands it. And it's a lot easier to get across.
Love it. That's the best explanation I've ever heard on that. And in that you're not communicating the correct thing. They are paying for X product. They are not paying for Y product. X product is 30 minutes on 3 o'clock on a Monday. That is your product. You are not paying at that. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I love it. That's gold dust for any music teachers out there. If you do nothing else this year, do that 100%. I'm going to do that 100% because that, like, not that we have time to reschedule. Like that's pretty much most music teachers are the same. But you don't have time to reschedule, so you are doing it to the detriment of yourself. But that's after nailing it in so much more clear that it's just they're paying for that slot and none other. That's brilliant. Perfect. The next thing you said was I can't even read my own writing. Oh yes.
Flat.
So a flat fee. Why do you favor a flat fee rather than paying for however many lessons are in that month or whatever?
It's really the same reason. It's about communicating what it is that you're providing, and that's their place in in the studio. So if you think about it, it's not really like this, but just for a moment, think about it like a gym membership. You pay this
Mm-hmm.
fee for every month for access to that gym. Yeah, you can access it at any time, so it's a bit different, but it is to be part of that club. And that is really what they're paying for in your studio. And it means that, again, you're getting across this thing that goes in hand with makeup lessons. So by paying you the same amount every month, it just communicates what they're actually paying for.
And how do you you know exactly where I'm gonna go with this? How do you communicate that then to people who are saying, oh yeah, but what if I what about over Christmas? Do I still need to pay the full month's membership over Christmas when you're not gonna be there for 2 weeks?
Yeah. So I find this goes fine once you've already implemented it and you're onboarding new students. If you just say face to face at the first meeting,
Yeah.
that if you're paying by month, it's the same amount every month, which makes it easier for you to budget. It's for them. It's easier for them. So when it comes to communicating that to current continuing students, it will take a little bit of repeating yourself and saying the same thing over and over as they get used to
Yeah.
the new system. But keep coming back to this makes it easier for everyone to budget. Music lessons are this much, no matter what's going on. And if they nitpick at it and say, but there's only 2 lessons this month. Okay, well, there were 5 in October or whenever there were. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason. It's equated across the whole year. And when it comes down to it, I find people do understand it. Understand it. It's like paying for monthly installments of insurance or whatever. It's just a monthly fee that you're paying.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. Is that you're in your house, sure, do you know what I mean? Half of the month, so you don't need it to be insured against theft, technically. Do you know what I mean? That's a really good way of putting it. Fantastic. So how then do you work out what your monthly fee is? Is it as simple as taking 45 weeks of the month, or 45 weeks of the year, I should say, and taking an average, or is there a better way of doing it?
Yeah, you would just be averaging it across. So make sure you're averaging it across however many months you actually teach. So if you teach 10 months out of the year, add up the lessons that you're scheduling for that week, once you've put in all your midterm breaks and whatever's happening, and then just divide that by the number of months they're actually going to pay you for, and that's your answer.
Very good. Love it. Absolutely love it. And then the third point that you brought up was raise your prices consistently. So how how much is too much and how much is not enough to be raising, and how should you work it out?
So the minimum amount is the rate of inflation, which is really uncomfortable because right now that's like 7 or 8%, but that's the minimum amount because
Yes.
otherwise you're going to end up devaluing your lessons over time. And then you will have to make some giant leap later if you want to, not lose your house. So
Yes.
you have to keep up with the rate of inflation. If you are below your local market, it should be a bit more than that because you should be gradually catching up to them,
Yeah.
up to the people who are around you as your experience increases or just because you're below the market rate.
Okay. So for example, I'm going to use a really low number, and this is not to say that it is a ridiculous number. If this is what you charge, I'm not having a go, but I'm going to use a low number just for the sake of making and for illustrating the point. So, say for example, you charge £10 for a half an hour lesson, and inflation is 1%. Next year, that would mean that you're going to raise your prices by 10 pence. Now, is it worth raising it by 10 pence so that your prices are now £10 and 10 pence? Or should you just go whole hog and raise it by 50 pence? And then saying that you've got a 5% increase. But then say, for example, next year you've got a 10% increase in inflation. So you're now up from £10 in January of last year to January of this year, you're now £11.60. Quick maths. That's potentially a little bit of a jump. Do you know what I mean? So, like, how would you work that out, or what? I don't really know if there's a question in there. I'm more wanting to get your thoughts on that type of a scenario.
Yeah. I don't think there is an amount, unless you're at the top end of your market and people are already quitting because you're too
Yeah.
expensive. I don't think there is an amount that's actually too much. And I think teachers tend to veer onto the side of too little. So
Yes.
if you are super after money and really greedy about it, I don't think you're in this profession. So I don't think you're going to raise it too much. It's just really uncommon for teachers to
Yeah.
have that mindset of like being all about the profit.
Yeah.
So think about that 10 pence thing. If that is the right amount, it is going to be, again, averaged over that flat monthly rate or whatever. So it's not going to work out. And then you're going to round it up to the nearest number once you do that maths. So
Yeah.
that's not going to be a problem where they're having to pay you 10 pence every week because you're not going to charge each
Yeah.
week. That's,
No, of course. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah. But all businesses are putting up their prices based on inflation. And I know a lot of teachers' first instinct that I talk to is, well, therefore I can't because families are already so overburdened.
Yep.
And I'm like, but therefore you have to
Therefore,
because
you have to.
you
Yeah.
have to buy stuff too. You are a person too. So
Exactly.
you do have to keep up with it. That's just the reality of business. So
Yeah.
whether
There was
it's
one.
10% or 5%, it's kind of that's up to the universe more than up to you if you're just going to
Yeah.
keep up with inflation.
Yeah. There's the one thing that I learned is that if you put up your prices, say your flat monthly rate is £100 a month, and you put up your prices by 15%, for example, and it's now £115 a month. If you have 10 students and two of them drop off because they can't afford the extra £15 a month, you've made that back pretty much with the extra that you charge and other students, and you've made space for two more students that can actually come and pay that price. So it swings around about, and it's just it's like you're saying, it's these uncomfortable things that as music teachers we don't like to think about, and we always put ourselves second, and it's okay to actually have to run the business of this, and it's okay to do these things. And so for anyone that needed to hear that, go and do it. It's okay. Go
Yeah,
and get it
and if
done.
you do
Make it
have
happen.
these hesitations about, oh, but I can't do this because, you know, little old me, I can't do it. If you need to tell yourself this, it's actually for the sake of your students. If you go out of business, who are you serving anyway? And you
Exactly.
can't stay in business if you're like slowly shrinking your fees due to not following at least the rate of inflation.
Exactly. Love it. I absolutely love it. So, Nicola, before we head into a quick fire round and start finishing up, is there anything that you're working on at the moment or what's next for you?
What's next? More VMT stuff is always what I'm working on, private music teaching. That's what that stands for. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we're heading over to a conference in the States this summer. So we're working on games for that and lots of fun stuff we're going to be doing over there. If people are listening
Oh,
and they're going to NCKP, I might see you there. But that's our big project at the moment. And otherwise, it's just all the usual membership goodness.
cool. Whereabouts in the States are you going?
NCKP is just outside Chicago.
Lovely. I'd love to be heading over to the States to do a conference. That sounds like so big, fancy, big city kind of classness. I sound like an absolute simpleton now with that, but you're listening anyway. Grand. That's excellent. We'll keep an eye out for all of that goodness. Let's head into a quick fire round now. These are just some questions that are, I always describe them as like icebreakers, but at the end. So, question number one. I've specifically tailored these a little bit because I've not had an Irish person on the podcast in a while. So, first question.
Okay.
First question. Barry's or Lions?
Oh, Barry's, but I don't actually drink tea. But Barry's if I do.
Okay. You're like the rarest of the rare that doesn't drink tea.
I drink herbal tea. I drink coffee though more than regular
Okay, yeah,
tea.
well, yeah. Oh, fair enough. So, like, if you go into someone's house and like, will you have tea? It was like, yes, I'll have some herbal tea. Oh, we've only got Barry's. Grand, I'm all right then. Is that how it goes?
I'll just say, "Do you have lemon and and I'll have some hot water." That would be my compromise.
Well, like I said, the rarest of the rare, and to each their own. So you go, girl. Fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I'm dying to hear the answer to this next one, right? Tato or King?
Oh, Tato. Come on.
Oh, I'm kind of disappointed you didn't have a really exotic answer for that one as well.
Oh no, if I have to choose between the classics, it'd be Tato.
Yeah, no, Tato all the way. Tato all the way. Unless you're in the pub. For some reason, if you're in the pub, King crisps are nicer. And I don't know why. I think it's because I can't get King crisps over here. I don't know what it is, but yeah, for anybody outside of Ireland, Tato and King are probably the two biggest brands of crisps in Ireland. Tato, obviously, everybody knows Tato, but people don't know King. Yeah, anyway. So, right, let's keep going with another couple. This is one that I've been asking everybody lately, and I just find it hilarious. What celebrity would you like to fight?
Oh my gosh. What celebrity would I like to fight? I'm not a
Like you,
fighter. I don't know who I would
no, but
fight.
you don't need to dislike them. You can just like just call them out and I don't know, have a fight.
I don't think I can answer this. I don't think I would fight with anyone.
Okay, let's rephrase the question. If you had to fight someone, like you have to fight them, who do you think you could? Who do you think you could take?
Who do I think I could take? Oh my god. I don't know. Someone small and weak.
Like one of Jedward or something.
Justin Bieber. He doesn't look very strong
Justin Bieber. I love it.
or
Let's go for that
nice.
one. Yeah. Sure enough. Yeah. Well, look here. You're hard to hear first, Justin. Step out for belts. Out you come. Um, right. Let's do two more, and we'll leave it there. So, what is the best holiday you've ever been on? That's a lovely, wholesome one.
Oh, so many good holidays. I'm big on travel. The one that's been on my mind a lot lately is my trip to Australia, which was it was at the start of 2020. So it was particularly sweet because it was like I got in a trip just
Mm-hmm.
before the world
Yeah.
shut down. And I
Yeah.
keep imagining myself back in Sydney. So I'll go with that one.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And then lastly, what is the funniest joke you know?
Oh, I'm big for terrible jokes. Like
Yeah.
the funniest jokes to me are like the really punny dad jokes, as they would be called.
Yep. Go
Uh,
for it.
I don't have one to recite to you. I
Oh
I can't
no.
think of one right now off the top of my head. No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, if you do think of one, text me or email me it, and I'll make sure that it's included in the show notes. Nicola, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Before we go, really quick, and it's also May the 4th. So anyone listening to this in probably about a month's time, it's Star Wars Day. So May the 4th be with you. And as Irish people would always automatically want to reply, and also with you. But anyway, May the 4th be with you.
And also with you. We even have a game. We have a game called May the 4th that members will be playing today. Like the interval of a fourth is what it's playing on. So.
Oh, I love it. Up a Star Wars, savage. So I just before we started recording, I saw a TikTok of Lord of the Rings if it had lightsabers, and it was the best thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It made me so happy. Yeah, Nicola, before we go, really quick, where can people find you if they're looking for you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is vibrantmusicteaching.com, or you can find us. We're at Colourful Keys on whatever your favorite social is.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Nicola. Thanks very much.